Hello everyone and welcome to Metagame Mastery, where it's not just about what the card does, but how it impacts the game. If you've been following the channel for a while, you'll know that a very close friend of mine lost his battle with leukemia over the summer. And at the time, I was training for a major competitive level event at Gen Con, and I was able to really bury myself in that for a little while. I managed to play in the beta draft qualifiers and get all the way to the final round at 6:30 in the morning before I finally lost. And while I technically had another opportunity to qualify, between the fatigue and everything else, my grief caught up to me, and I've been I've been struggling personally ever since. One of the things that's happened since then is, of course, the memorial service, and his mother, knowing our history, um, passed on a bunch of his card stuff that she didn't understand. And one of the things that I found when going through everything was a deck that we put together, and he really loved playing. I'd like to share that with you today. So without further ado, this is Seth's Rakdos, Megrim Burn, Kitchen Table, Deck Tech. Now there are two aspects to this deck, burn and discard. And at the time, he was looking to get back into Magic, and he was looking to do it on a budget. And burn cards were a little bit more expensive back then. So we found a way to sort of merge two different tactics, and it came together pretty synergistically. It was one of the favorite decks, not just of his, but of everyone's at our kitchen table games. It'll be both versatile in one-on-one games and good in big multiplayer mashups. First up is the obvious. He's running 4 uh, copies of Lightning Bolts, which, if you're not familiar with it, you should be. It's 1 red mana for an instant, deals 3 damage to target creature or player. He's also running 4 copies of Incinerate, which is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a red for an instant, deals 3 damage to target creature or player, and a creature dealt damage that way can't be regenerated this turn. And 4 copies of a card called Lightning Reaver. It's 5 CMC, 3 colorless, black and a red for a 3/3 zombie beast with fear and haste. Whenever he deals damage to a player, put a charge counter on it. At the end of your turn, Lightning Reaver deals damage equal to the number of charge counters on it to each opponent. So Lightning Reaver is an odd card to put in this deck. It's a little bit slow. The reason for it is more so for the big multiplayer get-together games that we did, but it deals 3 damage potentially twice on a repeatable source, and that will be significant when interacting with some cards later on. And of course, there's the discard effects. Hymn to Torok is 2 black mana for a sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards at random. This is just a great way for you to hit your opponent's hand early and gain card advantage, potentially getting rid of their best bomb in their hand in the process. And running 4 copies of Megrim, which is 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a black for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent discards a card, it deals 2 damage to that player. And the idea was, if we have Megrims out and a couple other enchantments, all the discard effects will also act as additional burn on the cheap. Also, when we put the deck together, at the time they had just come out with a new card called Liliana's Caress, which is pretty similar. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a black for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life, which not only is great redundancy, it's cheaper and it's life loss rather than damage, making it more difficult to prevent. And then there's the cards that really bring the two strategies together, really make them synergize. The biggest is Blightning. It's perfect for this deck. It's 3 CMC, 1 colorless, black and a red for a sorcery. It deals 3 damage to target player, and that player discards 2 cards. If you have even 1 Megrim out when you cast this, or say a Liliana's Caress on turn 2, then this deals 7 damage and they lose 2 cards, which is a huge, powerful effect when you have the opportunity to play it. And the reason why this deck is so fixated on dealing 3 damage is a card called Pain Magnification. It's 3 CMC, 1 colorless, a black and a red for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent is dealt 3 or more damage by a single source, that player discards a card, allowing our Incinerates, our Blightnings, and our Lightning Bolts, even our Lightning Reavers, to all trigger our Megrims and Liliana's Caresses. And lastly, the big finisher is Chandra Ablaze. She's 6 CMC, 4 colorless, red for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. You can give her +1 to discard a card. If a red card is discarded this way, she deals 4 damage to target creature or player. -2, each player discards his or her hand and draws 3 cards. And then her -7 is cast any number of red instant and or sorcery cards from your graveyard without paying their mana costs. So this Planeswalker is actually perfect for this deck, allowing us to turn additional enchantments into burn spells to help finish our opponent off, or just replenishing our hand. And then lastly, allowing us to have just an absolutely massive turn where we recast everything we've played in our graveyard. And for some additional creature control, there's 4 copies of Terminate in the deck. For the mana base, it's actually pretty straightforward since this was a budget deck. We're running 9 mountains, 9 swamps, and 4 Terramorphic Expanse. Now, since we put this deck together, there have been new cards that came out, and one of them in particular would be a huge upgrade to this deck. And that's Waste Not. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a black for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent discards a creature card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, add 2 black mana to your mana pool. And whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, draw a card. One of the things that Seth understood about the deck is that Painful Quandary can be sort of a clunky card sometimes, and this would be a great addition to the deck for more modern times. Well, that's it for today. For everyone who knew Seth, we loved him and we miss him, and this has been Metagame Mastery. Peace.